hold of us. And that's all we care about anymore, generally. And we strip it back. We find that we can have everything through Jesus. We can have everything through the Eucharist, if only we open our eyes in a gentle way. And that's what Carlo is showing.
But
us.
if we have faith, Martin, why do we need the relic of peace from the heart of Carlo?
Well, if we have faith, then the churches would be much more full than they are. So there wouldn't be as many murders, there wouldn't be as many problems in society. So I would argue that maybe we don't have faith in a large scale in this country, particularly what the things we've done to children in this country and the newborn. And I think that someone like Carlo can bring us back to what's important. Can kind of like be a signpost to say, because he promoted Eucharistic miracles. And to think of it, Joe, that these miracles, 450 of them verified, that they're the body and blood of Jesus. Actually, just think of that wee piece of bread. It actually is the body and blood.
So there's 140, you said there's 50 miracles attributed to Blessed Carlo Acutis.
No. To the Eucharistic miracle, which means the Holy Communion turning into the body and blood of Jesus. And that's what Carlo was pointing towards. So he was saying to us, don't be so blind. Look, Jesus is real. He's in the Eucharist. He can transform your life just like he's transformed mine. And that's what the power of a shrine or a relic or a visit.
Let me bring in.
And I just say one more thing. Joe. That I think that he converted his parents. So I think there's a message in that for Irish people that it's the youth that will reconvert the parents of this country. The parents who've done so much damage to themselves and to the society and who have fallen so far away from God can be brought back. It doesn't matter what you do in this life. It doesn't matter what happened to you. All that matters is the present. And if Blessed Carlo helps bring people back to confession and a healing, then that's his job done, you know?
Okay, John, now, Brenda, I'll bring you back in now. There's been 15 minutes and we have a number of callers who are sceptical. You can address them. John Hamill. John, good afternoon. Well, what questions would this raise for you, this veneration and adoration of a relic, a piece of the heart of Carlo Acutis, Blessed Carlo Acutis, John?
Yeah, well, it doesn't really raise any questions with respect to the young man, Carlo himself. Joe, he sounds like a very sympathetic character, a lovely young man. It really raises questions about the overall story that we're told about the God that arranged these matters. So I think a reasonable way to think about it is, imagine, Joe, you were interviewing for who's going to be God, who's going to have the omnipotent power to arrange things however they like. And you had some character who turned up and told you the way he was going to arrange things was for a lovely young guy like this, Carlo, to get leukemia, to die a horrible, painful death at a very young age, then to be tortured in fire in purgatory before he's led into heaven, and then for the followers to put his body in a box apart from his heart, to cut his heart out and put his heart in a separate box. And then he would dust his hands off and think, that's the way I want to arrange things, and that'll be a good outcome. You wouldn't fall down on your knees and worship that character. You would think, this person is an utter psychopath who should be on somebody's watch list. What kind of world is this that we are advocating, that we think the most sympathetic, great story we want to hear about is a God who gives horrible diseases to very nice young people?
Is that not a good point, Brenda, that God took?
Listen, I'm just going to come in there on that. First of all, people don't worship or adore Carlo's body. Blessed Carlo is a signpost. Now, the young lad has done so much studying, so much about these Eucharistic miracles. You only need to look at one Eucharistic miracle. And I have a friend in Portugal who examined a Eucharistic miracle in Portugal and compared it with the one in Louisiana in Italy. It was the same.
But if it's not, but Brenda, if it's not about the adoration of a body, why are you bringing part of Carlo's body around?
No, we're bringing, right.
Why do you need to bring part of Carlo's body around?
Right, we need, first of all, the relic. Catholics come back, right back beyond the ages, into their rosaries, into wee medal relics, and for them to get an actual first-class relic of a person in the Catholic tradition was they would use that for healing, for a miracle, if there was to be a miracle.
But why to paraphrase John's question, why would John's query, why would a good God take a good child like Carlo at such a young age?
Well, I can see now why God has taken Carlo.
Why?
Because I see Carlo, I mean, okay, the young lad was speaking there earlier, he thinks he's in purgatory, he's and then he's to go to heaven, and he's suffering. Carlo has already interceded, and I've loads of letters where he's already interceded, where people has prayed to him, not asking Carlo for the message, we don't, or for the healing, or the cure, or the miracle, but for Carlo to intercede for them and to ask Jesus. Regarding Carlo having leukemia or whatever, there's a lot of things in life that we blame God on, and they're man-made. You know, people say, why this war? Why the killings? Oh, why is God allowing that? God gave everybody free will. Now, Carlo is leading people. What Carlo's life is about, the short life that he lived, is to bring people back to the Eucharist. Need it more today than it ever was. How many people our children, I mean, we hope to go to school, and you go to a school and you say, how many of you have made your first communion? Oh, all their hands is up. How many of you was it your last communion?
I know that.
And it was your last communion.
Okay.
That's concern. So we need Carlo.
But you say so in other words, your demonstration of faith is your attendance at a building every Sunday.
Yes. But it's not at a building.
Okay.
Mine would be to receive the Eucharist, because it's our spiritual food. We can go out and dine and have a 3-course meal at a fancy hotel. That's good for the body, but the body rots and goes to dust. What about our spirit? Are we feeding our spirit with the Eucharistic food that we need for the soul?
Okay.
You know, because they separate when we leave this world. So are we feeding? I mean, you know, we could go on with all, but you see, the centre of our faith is the Eucharist, adoration, and receiving Jesus.
Brenda, sorry, I'm appearing rude, and I don't mean to be rude, but I will let you back in.
You're all right.
Monsignor Richard Gibbons from Knock Shrine. Richard, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Joe. You do me too enormous. I'm simply Father Richard.
Okay, I thought we had elevated you. I signed a petition. I signed some petition, Richard. I don't know where it went. Obviously, it fell on deaf ears. Why are you bringing this relic to Knock?
Well, it's actually not me. It's, as Brenda eloquently pointed out there, it's Brenda and her prayer group contacted me. So she was in contact with us. I know Brenda, excellent lady, and she just got in contact in terms of that the relics were coming to Ireland. They'd already been here in Armagh and down in Connor, and that they would like to take them to Knock because, well, it's the national shrine, so why not? And, of course, one of the focuses here in Knock is the Eucharist. It's the International Eucharistic and Marian Shrine. And because there was that tie-in with Carlo and his devotion to the Eucharist, it made perfect sense. So they'll be coming on Friday the 15th. And we'll be looking forward to welcoming them, as well as Archbishop Sorrentino from Assisi. So I think it's not so much about what's physically coming. Like it points, as I think Brenda and others were pointing there, beyond that. It's just the life of this young boy, quite unusually dedicated himself to his faith and found within the faith, for somebody of that age, something unique and something precious, something that gave him hope, and something that helped him to cope with the illness that he had. just simply being able to give witness to that to others. So I love there was a little anecdote, Joe, about him, that when the parents would bring him on holidays to the beach, he'd go down to the beach fine, but then they'd look for him and they'd find him above the church with a group of, let's say, older women praying the rosary together. So there were all these little aspects of and as Brenda pointed out quite correctly, it's through what he expressed in his life that his parents then re-examined their own faith. So I think it's about finding where do we find hope? Where do we find salvation? We find it in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. He is the focus of all of our faith, and I think that's what should be held first, front and centre.
But in the apparition at Knock, which was 1879, the anniversary just passed, 24th of August. Did any of the people, and there was children there as well, and adults, were any of them beatified?
No, none of them, and that's actually one of the aspects of the Knock apparition that kind of made it, if you like, credible in one way, because these were ordinary people living an ordinary life that came out on a Thursday evening to see this extraordinary thing, not all together. Separately, they saw it from various different parts of the village here and the surrounds of Knock, and they just in later years then they just went back to living lives as ordinary people. In fact, two immigrated to America. One whom lived in New York, and nobody knew anything about his story. Nothing at all whatsoever about his story, John Curry, until he was re-examined. He was 5 years old at the time of the apparition, for example. And in 1936, when he was an elderly man, he was re-examined again as to what he did see, what he didn't see. So, but they lived ordinary lives. They never made anything about it, apart from the fact that they gave testimony to what they saw, and their testimony was accepted as trustworthy and satisfactory by 2 commissions of inquiry.
Okay. So I just want to ask John, let John Hamill come back in. John, sure. From your perspective, when you hear Father Gibbon saying when he used to go to the beach, he would end up in the church saying the rosary with older parishioners. What does that mean to you, those stories?
Well, it doesn't give any credibility to the claims being made, because this nice young man happened to go to church. As Brenda said earlier, we were told, you asked Brenda about how come this loving God gave Carlo leukemia. The answer was that there's evil in the world because we all have free will. Well, leukemia wasn't made by free will. It wasn't made by anyone's free will. If you want to claim that there's an invisible carpenter in the sky who created everyone in his own image, then that same character created leukemia and countless other diseases. So really what we're doing here is we're parading around the body of a young man and using that to ask people to worship the God that killed him. That's what's being asked, and it's actually worse than that, because there's countless thousands of people who die at a young age in, let's say, India. And the same people who will tell us that you have to ask Carlo to intercede on Jesus on our behalf will also tell us that all of the Hindus who died at a young age are going to hell because they believed in the wrong God. I mean, it's totally incoherent. And the reasons that we are asked to believe in this are things like the apparition at Knock. I mean, come on, it's the most superstitious gibberish you've ever heard. Like a still image appearing on a gable wall. Apparently, Mary and Jesus came the whole way from heaven to say hello to people on earth and didn't even say anything. It was just an image on a wall at twilight, an unmoving image. And I don't know, by the way, why it's called a Marian apparition, because it wasn't just Mary was there. Jesus was there too. But maybe we don't talk so much about Jesus at Knock because he was dressed up as a sheep for the apparition. I mean, come on, grow up.
Have you been to Knock, John?
No. I've driven through it. I haven't been out to the Basilica where you exit through the gift shop.
Where you exit through the what? Sorry? The gift shop.
Exit through the gift shop. Isn't that what you do at these attractions, Joe?
Can I come in there, Joe?
Yes. Who's that? Martin.
Martin.
Yes.
Yeah. I respect John's opinion. Everyone has an opinion, and actually, the more fervent someone is against God is full of surprises. Maybe in later life he'll be the most enthusiastic. God can touch anyone's heart. But I just say that I would ask John to look at some of the Eucharistic miracles that Carlo was pointing towards, where Holy Communion miraculously turned into the body and blood of Jesus, but medical science backs up, and all these Eucharistic miracles link up with there's no DNA on it. They're all the same blood type. They're still.
Martin, there's no medical science that has discovered that wine and bread is turned into the body and blood.
No, the Eucharistic miracles that Carlo was pointing towards is the medical proof. If you go and look,
where is the medical proof? There's no. If there was medical proof that wine, I don't mean to be confrontational, but if there was medical proof that wine and the host was turned into the body and blood, scientific proof. I'd love to see that. Okay, we'll try and I'll ask our listeners. I'll ask. Well, we'd have an ad break and ask people to search. Is there any scientific evidence where the body and the I know people believe it and deeply believe it as a central part of their